Good evening, everybody who's dialed in this evening for our Sidley London Revolution webinar, and also to anyone who is watching this later on who's not able to dial in this evening. My name is Nick. I'm the CEO of Threshold Sports, and we have the pleasure of delivering this event for Sidley and the other kind of 1,000 riders who are going to be joining us, 1,000 plus riders and runners who are going to be joining us on the 1st and 2nd October. The job of this webinar this evening is to answer any questions people might have and ultimately give you as much guidance and information for anyone who's signed up to either ride, run or walk in the London Revolution later on this year. We're lucky enough to be joined by Keith and Gary, who are the route directors on this event, who will be able to answer any questions we've got and give you some really good insight into the best ways of preparing for this event. We're great to have them with us. Beyond their expertise as cyclists in their own rights, ex-racers and ultra-distance riders, they've also got experience of delivering the Tour de France events, Ride London, and some of the top events delivered in this country. So we are very lucky to have them with us this evening, and more importantly, looking after all the riders come October. So we'll go through various different topics over the course of the webinar this evening. But if you've got any questions which come up on the way through, please add them onto the chat. And if you send them through to me, I'll be able to direct them to Gary or other people in this webinar. So without further ado, we will kick off with a quick summary of what the event actually is. So Lucy, if you can skip on to the next slide, that'd be great. So when we set up London Revolution all the way back in 2012, we had the idea of wanting to create the perfect cycling weekend. Lots of us at Threshold like getting out on our bikes, like getting outdoors, but we are far from necessarily the elite cycling end of the field. We like adventure, we like seeing new places, and we like taking part in events where we feel really well supported. So we created this event, which is a 250-kilometer loop right the way around London. And we set it up so that you can take in some of the kind of iconic sites of the capital early on the Saturday when you set off from Lee Valley, but we clear through the London streets early when most people are still asleep or waking up on a Saturday morning. And then for the rest of the ride on the Saturday, when you get out towards the North Downs, head west round towards our overnight base camp at Windsor, and the next day carrying on round into the Chilterns and back towards the start at Lee Valley. That's where we look to get onto these beautiful, quiet, calm roads for cycling. So it is this brilliant combination of urban cycling to begin with, but then some of the best home county cycling out there as well. After seeing the success of that event since we grew it in 2012, we had lots of people who wanted to come along but actually take part in the running and trails element of this as well. So built around the base camp, the overnight base camp at Windsor, we introduced some trail walking and running elements. So for the last few years, we've also been offering the chance of people to take part in a half marathon, marathon or ultra distance run, walk or jog, finishing back at that base camp at Windsor. And again, this is intended to be something which is accessible to anyone who's got the basic kit with them. And it's also designed so that whether you're a serious runner looking to push beyond marathon distance up towards 50 kilometers to that ultra marathon territory, there's a great route which takes you into the Chilterns, picks up some hills around there before picking up the river, coming back into Windsor. But also, if you're newer to this, or you don't have quite so much time for training, or you want to walk it with some friends, we've got the half marathon option, which is a brilliant Thameside walk past some beautiful places through places like Marlow and Maidenhead. So it's got something for everyone, whether you're really looking to push on your physical limits, or doing something which is a little bit more relaxing and maybe focused on some of the hospitality overnight at the base camp. So that was the root of the event. As I alluded to just then, the event is designed to be really well supported. So there are lots of events out there where you're expected to be an expert in whatever it is you're signing up to do, whether it be cycling, running, walking, a triathlon. We want to build events where you may have, a bit less experience. This might be the first event of this type that you've done, and we want to look after you right from the moment you sign up through to when you cross the finish line, and we give you your medal at the end. So the support we provide on the event is second to none. So if we flick onto the next slide, Lucy, we'll be able to talk through a bit of what we do to make sure you get through the event in great shape. So Keith, if I hand over to you to talk about some of the provision on the cycling route to begin with.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Nick. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. Pleased to meet you and for your joining us this evening. As Nick says, it's about an enjoyable event, and we're here to support you. And it is a fully supported event. And so we're looking after your needs as best as we can for the whole of the 250k that you're taking part in. As such, we will have a number of chaperones on the ride, both motorcycle chaperones. We'll have a lead cyclist that will lead the routes out, and then we'll have a number of support motorcyclists that will be on the route, as well as with the rear markers of the two for the ultra and the weekenders. We'll have cycle chaperones as well, so if you're falling behind or whatever, we'll always know effectively between the motorcycles and the cyclist chaperones exactly where everyone is on the route, and certainly where the start and the finish are. And as to complement those, we have support vehicles as well. So if unfortunately you do come off and graze your knee, or you have a mechanical issue with the bike on the route, if it's a simple puncture, or you just your gears are slipping and we need to tighten up the cables and whatever, our staff on the route can probably do that for you. If it's a little bit more severe than that, a mechanical issue on your bike, then what we can do is we can take you and your bike in the vehicle and move you on to the next pit stop, to the feed station, where we have dedicated trained mechanics at each of the feed stations to check your bike over and to see what kit they have. Unfortunately, with over 1,000 plus riders, we can't carry kit for everyone's different type of variety of bike, but as best as we can, we'll have a good scope of various kit there, chains, etc. If your chain snaps and we haven't got a link to fix it, then obviously we'll have spare chains, inner tubes, and we'll come on to the kit that we would like you to bring with you on the day to make your ride a lot easier and a lot smoother. But certainly, as I say, it's a fully supported route. So if you do have an issue, I think we use what 3 words, and let us know where your location is via the event control, who will contact ourselves out on the route, and we will get support to you as best, well, as soon as we can, not as best as we can. We will get support to you, but obviously it's a big long route, and the ultras are doing it all in one day, so we are spread out, but we do have sufficient support with the motorcycles, the cyclists, and the support vehicles to be able to get you as quick as we can, and hopefully get you back on the road and riding again. It is a fully signposted route. I normally, I do apologise, I am actually out on site recce's, Gary, myself, and I normally have in the back of my vehicle 1 or 2 of our signs that we have, the arrows. They are quite distinctive, the arrows. They're about 60 centimetres long, and they're a black arrow on a day glow background with a black border on them. We have one of the rides we do each year is supported by Sir Chris Hoy, who has actually complimented on our signage and the signage that we have and how visible it is. We have a very experienced number of signage teams who will go out the day before on the Friday and sign the whole 250k route. So you shouldn't get lost. If you have a Garmin or a GPS on your bike, that is an addition, because we will fully signpost the route and earmark where the pit stops, the feed stations are, so you don't miss anything. And I say they are an experienced team, and we do this all over the country, from Scotland right down to the south coast. So you will not miss the signs. They are quite distinctive and quite big as well. You'll see, you may have been on some other events where they're small signs. These are big ones. They're actually a copy of the ones they use in the Tour de France. So that is good enough to get the cyclists around the whole of France for the Tour de France. They're certainly good enough to get you around the 250k London Revolution. I touched on mechanics. Yes, that some of our staff are trained and can do quick fixes for you and hopefully get you back on the road. I say if it is a little bit more severe, then we have proper trained mechanics at the feed stations who can have a better look at your bike. We did do a ride last year with trained mechanics, and we actually changed someone's mech totally at one of the feed stations. We picked them up, supported them, got him to the feed station. The poor guy was gutted because obviously, like yourselves, he was raising money for sponsorship and he thought he was going to have to dip out of the event. But actually, we managed to change the whole mech within about 40 minutes or so, got him back on the road, and he completed the ride. So, there are instances we can do that. Unfortunately, sometimes if your hanger's gone and we haven't got the right type of hanger for your derailleur, then sometimes it's a bit difficult. But we will try our best to fix your bike and get it on the road. And we'll come on to later on about what you need to do pre-events and what you should be looking for in respect of your bikes and the kit that you should need with you. Cheers, Nick. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Keith. That's great. I think you've kind of hit on exactly how we approach the support for this ride, which is trying to remove as many barriers as possible, make it as easy as possible and enjoyable as possible for you to complete this route. So in the same way with the mechanics, the signposting, the chaperones, the support, we've also got that medical support out on the route as well, and at the base camp. So if you start getting niggles with a knee or something like that, we've got people who can try and patch you up and keep you going. Very importantly, for both the energy but also the kind of moral and emotional support, there'll be pit stops out on the route, and this is both for the trails events and also for the cycling events, and they're fully stocked with a mix of sports nutrition, so kind of your carbohydrate gels, which we'll talk about in a second, but also kind of regular food as well. So this is things like crisps, sandwiches, cereal bars, fruit. So a real mix of things, whether you prefer your kind of more kind of elite level sports nutrition, or if like me, you prefer something a bit more kind of akin to what you might eat through choice on a normal day. And that's very much in line with this approach of supplying the food and support which you'd be used to when you're out training, which again, when we talk about the training, we'll pick that up. So you've got the medical support, you've got the support out on the route, you've got this food and drink on the way around, but also we'll carry your bag right the way through from the start when you arrive at Lee Valley through to the overnight camp at Windsor, if you're doing the weekender package. And the base camp is a really key part of the event. So Lucy, if we flick onto the next slide, please. The base camp is kind of the heart of the event as well. So doing an event like this, like Sidley London Revolution, is a big undertaking. We don't underestimate the effort that goes into the preparation, the training, the time it takes to get ready for an event. This is a serious cycling challenge or a serious trail running challenge for anyone who takes part in it. We think that's worth celebrating. Lots of events, you'll arrive in a car park, you'll pack your bike off the roof, you'll ride around, tire yourself out, you arrive over the line, and then you get sent home to potentially a slightly unreceptive reception, and get you to kind of pick up and carry on with your normal life. We believe in celebrating the achievements of all the riders and runners who take part. So we build this big base camp at Windsor, and it's got your bag will be waiting for you there. If you're camping, your tent is fully set up. There's cracking food, there's a bar, there's music. There's also loads of entertainment for family and friends as well. So if you're planning on riding it and you've got people who are in the area or want to travel down, they're allowed into the base camp at any time. They could spend the whole afternoon there waiting for you to come in. And equally, after you arrive, you can kick back, relax with them, and spend the evening there. So it's an amazing atmosphere when the sun is shining and things like that. So bring the extended supporter club along, friends, family. Make the most of that weekend, because it's a fantastic spot to get to know not only other people from Team Sidley and the other riders, but a chance to actually celebrate your achievements along the way as well. So in terms of key event preparation, if you can just flick to the next slide, please, Lucy. There are three main things which we want you to consider. One is your training, one is your kit, and one is the final admin, to make sure there's nothing in there which you might have forgotten or not considered. And we want it to be as smooth as possible when you arrive as part of Team Sidley. So the first bit is around training. Gary, I think you're probably the most experienced in this group to talk about this and how best to prepare for the ride itself. So Lucy, if you click on the next slide, Gary can take it from there.
Okay, thanks, Nick, and hello, everybody. Previous slide there, had a couple of guys holding their bikes up. That won't necessarily need to be the training you need to do to pick your bike up over your head, although it's a great thing, and if your bike's light enough to do, then it's a good thing as well. The training plans then are on the Team Sidley participant information platform, and now those are 16 weeks and 12 weeks. We're down at about 7 weeks now, but if you pick those up and go to just literally the last few weeks you need before the event, if you're behind on your training, you can still pick things up from that and just follow it through. It makes all sense, and you will get yourself ready for it. It's at the moment, it's a matter of just trying to get a ride in. There's nothing better than like being on the bike. So time on the bike, ride if you can, do something every other day at the moment. Maybe get your Saturday or your Sunday as the big ride you want to do to get out into the countryside. But if you can be doing something during the week, if it's wet and rainy, we haven't had much of that recently, but if it is and it's not too hot and sticky, and you've got an indoor trainer, have a think about doing that and turning your legs over, and building it right up to the point where in that last week, even before the ride, you'll still go out and have a leg loosening ride. Don't do a big one 2 days before you're going to do the London Revolution. So you need to get a couple of days rest in. So something beats nothing. Have a think about riding fast at some points, riding slower at other points. Make sure you're getting hill training in. This isn't a flat route. It's a fantastic and it's a beautiful route, but it's once you've gone through London, you start into the south of London, and you've got your first sort of 35 kilometers under your belt. The hills start, and they're fairly lumpy. They're not long ones. They're not super steep, but they're enough to challenge your legs. And so if you can get some good riding on a few sort of hills wherever you are, you'll get that training. What you are rewarded with, of course, is either a downhill or long sections of flat on the route that are after the climbs before you descend. And it's as I say, it's a beautiful route, and it tends to sort of pull you in. It draws you in with the countryside, so sometimes you don't actually recognize how far you've been, and that's another good thing with the course as well. No need to practice actually on the route. Don't go and try and find necessarily the route around London, because that won't necessarily do you any good. You will get the GPX for your bicycle computer, the file that will send you, which you can download into it. But I'd say I wouldn't go out to look for it. There are a lot of roads out there, and the ones we've got are specifically chosen. So use your area and try to get your riding up so that you're quite comfortable for doing 100 kilometers, 60 miles, and then literally in the last 2 weeks that you're up and you're able to do 120 and 130 kilometers, your first day is just under 150. So you will find that once you're comfortable with those distances, you will be able to do the extra if it's required. If you're an ultra rider, well, then your training is different. You're training for being able to go for 200 and comfortably at 200. And if you haven't had the chance to ride a 250 before, that you've got something in the region of 220 and 230 under your belt, and you know that you will get that last hour on the bike through to get you in. So it is literally about time on the bike and time relative to the distance that you've been doing, making sure that you've got that you've got food with you when you're doing your training. We've covered a little bit about that now, and how you eat, and whether you are a an energy bar person, as Nick said, and a gel person, or you're somebody who actually needs something else, and you need something a little bit not as sugary, the chances are that on your training, that if you are starting to get longer distances in, your stomach can start to react against too much of the sugar, and then you start to feel a little bit sick, and sometimes you get a bit of stomach acid. So I would say make sure that you're balancing that and you're rehearsing that and you're training for it as well. You need to do a couple of rides in the kit that you're going to ride the event in. Don't just save all your best new kit and just get onto it. You need to actually know that your kit is going to be comfortable for you when you're actually doing it. So, and as I say, we've got lay out all of your kit not the night before. Make sure that you've got everything, count it all through. If you need to, make lists beforehand, but make sure that you have got absolutely everything you need, and you need to make sure that you've got all of or a lot of that kit as a spare set for when you get into Windsor for your night's change. And if you really wanted to, take a third set as well, just in case. But certainly you've got you know what kit you need, and you've got it all listed, and we're going to cover that in a little bit. And then as soon as if you are feeling anything, if you're feeling back problems, knee problems, ankle problems, neck problems, hand problems, there's a few things to do. It could be a trip to the physio, as we've got listed here, but it could also be about asking other people about what they do. Have they got the same problems? What's their experience of them? And time on the bike will tell you whether you are somebody who, for instance, has hand problems or neck problems or back problems, and then that some of those things can be sorted out really rather quickly. There might not be a trip to the physio, there might be a trip to the bike shop to sort out your bike and make sure it's fitting you properly. So that's all about part of what comes in with the training. And as I said, it's basically trying to get comfort, time in the saddle, working out what your average speed will be, knowing that you can go up a hill, knowing that you can descend a hill, enjoying the flat sections afterwards, and getting a little bit of distance in so that you know that you're comfortable for either over 100k or over 200k if you're going to do the ultra as well.
Thanks, Gary. I think I might just add a couple of things from the trail side. Lots of those principles translate just as well from the bike across onto strapping on your trainers. Those things of, getting the time when you can, addressing those kind of niggles, using your kit, lots of similarities, and the same thing with the training plans, picking those up where you are, and just seeing what time you can get in on those routes. We've got the options as well. If you're you might have signed up for, say, the marathon package or something like that, or the ultra marathon package, life begins to get in the way. One of the upsides of the trails package is you can actually move to a shorter route as well if you would like. So again, go with what's comfortable for you. This is meant to be, a tough challenge you're really proud of. But if you're feeling like it's maybe you've bitten off a bit too much or a bit more than you can chew, there are options to make sure you have a brilliant weekend as well. Lucy, if we switch on to the next one, there's a bit around just the safety, in particular on the road cycling elements.
It's really important that you obey the highway code, you obey highways regulations. We'll get the serious bits out of the way early on this. Unfortunately, when you set off from Lee Valley, you're coming down through central London. It's a great road through London, and with some fantastic sights, but there are traffic signals. We need everybody to stop at the traffic signals. We need everybody to stop at the pedestrian crossings and just do the things that you would expect that you would do either on your commute or that other drivers should do as well. It might slow you down a little bit. It can come into your training if you want, if you're living certainly in an urban environment, that if you wanted to practice starting off at sets of traffic lights when you've stopped, it's really good training to start and get riding again quickly. So it's a really important thing. You'll also need to watch out in the urban areas for whatever's going on with other road users. It could be early morning pedestrians that decide to just walk across the road. They won't necessarily be looking for you to hear you're coming. They'll be listening for cars if they're not looking. So you need to just try to keep your eyes open and around. Listen out if you're with other riders for any calls that are going on ahead to let you know of potholes in the road, for instance, sunken drains that are on the edge of the road. There is a set of etiquette that you'll, if you don't know already, the experienced riders will know that there's sets of etiquette where you'll see riders pointing at the ground on the left or the right. Generally, if it's on the left in the UK, you're talking about something like a pothole or a sunken drain, something that actually you want to avoid. The signing isn't just for you behind, it's for everybody. So sometimes it might be that you may need to think about passing that same signal on to somebody else if you know you've got riders behind you, so that you don't just swerve out of the way and then the others take the pothole. You'll hear people shouting car back or car forward. These are all safety measures, sometimes to let vehicles get past you so that the drivers don't try to get past you out of and make an innocent mistake of having to pull into a group. So this is all about riding with caution then, and learning. You'll pick up a lot of signals from other drivers. Of course, you've got left and right, so that helps everybody. But you may have gravel on the roads, for instance. If you're hearing calls and somebody shouts whole left, whole right, gravel, then that generally means that there is a big bunch of gravel that could be on a corner. You don't want to hit that. You don't want to go over. You may have to make the same shout. Let the riders behind you know as well. So these are all part of the general sort of etiquette of riding for riders to help themselves and listen in so that you can learn. When you, if you don't know it already, of course, if you're out on the country lanes, they're twisting, they're turning, they're great roads. They've got potholes. We can't do anything about the potholes. We can always keep talking to highways authorities and see whether they can come in and fill some of them. But generally, they're so busy at the moment there will be some that they've missed. You may find yourself on the roads with the speeds you're going down a hill, for instance, or you're trying to go past other riders. You'll find yourself drifting towards the centre of the road. Be careful not to go over the center of the road and put yourself in danger from oncoming traffic. And now that's quite difficult when you're on a very small country lane, and drivers will hopefully see groups of riders coming towards them. And then you may need to single out either to go past other cars, but what you don't want to be doing is riding on the wrong side of the road just to get past a group. Make sure that you're doing everything safely and you're thinking about the safety of other riders as well. When you're riding in a group, try to, if you've not ridden in groups before, you might find yourself in groups of 20, 30 cyclists. Always ensure that you are behind a wheel and not starting what we sort of say is you're starting to cross wheels. Your front wheel is starting to run alongside the rear wheel of another rider, and you're too close. That rider in front of you can make a sudden move to the right or to the left to dodge something on the road, and they will then touch your front wheel, and that's you. You're over. Then you've gone down, and then maybe other riders have gone down behind you. So don't get too close to the riders in front of you. If you're drafting along, and it's fabulous fun to let stronger riders, then make sure that you are just a few inches back behind at the closest that you're going to get to, and you might find that you might half a meter is a better distance, or even a meter. You will still get some drafting from other riders in doing that, but you are in a safer place to be doing it. You might find that if you're riding in a group that somebody else, and you've been really, if you've never done it before and you're new to it, you might find that somebody's going to notice that you're in there happily drafting away, and they might say, "Oi, your turn to go to the front." If you get the chance to, and you're strong enough, and you fancy go to the front, take your turn, and it's all part of the decor and the etiquette of riding in a group as well. But it's important to look around you when you're in a group, know who's with you, try to keep a straight line, because other riders will who are behind you or adjacent to you will get worried if you are trying to look to see too much of what's ahead, because you can't, and you've got other riders in front of you, if this makes some sense. So if you are riding in a group and you're finding yourself midway through the group, you have to trust all of the calls that are coming from the other riders to tell you where the potholes are. They might say hole center or gravel coming up, or car parked on the side of the road, and you'll hear all these. You have to put trust in those and try to keep a straight line. Trying to look out for the holes yourself means that you won't ride in a straight line, and you'll find that will start to be a bit frustrating or a little bit worrying for other riders. So these are some of the things that you'll find in. But if you do it, you will get used to it. I think that's more or less what we needed to cover on that one.
Yeah, that's great, Gary. I think some good, useful advice there. You know, a healthy amount of common sense, and hopefully giving people the best chance of getting around safe and sound with a big smile on their face. So Lucy, if we head on to the next one, I think we're going to talk about nutrition. As we said, nutrition, a really fundamental part of it. Your body is an amazing engine, but you do need to put the right fuel in it. Good news is the fuel costs of filling yourself up are fully taken care of by Threshold on this event. So we've got, like I said, a real mix of different things on the pit stops on the way around. So you've got the High Five Sports Nutrition. This stuff is absolutely fantastic. And we're going to have a mix of High Five energy gels, High Five slow release energy drinks, zero electrolyte tabs, and also a protein recovery drink when you finish the event as well, to help you get ready for the next day if you're riding the second leg round to Lee Valley again. So that provides a really good base for the more technical sports nutrition, particularly useful to sip away on that. When you're riding the bike, you want to be eating and drinking regularly. Kind of guidelines vary, but kind of at least every half an hour you should be taking some nutrition in, and ideally, you know, sip your water bottles as you go around. If you're used to training with this, then it's fantastic. You know, your body will be used to it, and that's the best way of preparing to actually take part in the event. If you haven't used High Five or any sports nutrition before, we'd recommend trying to buy some, and we've got links on the participant information platform where you can find out where to buy the exact same things we'll have on the live event. Start trialing them, see how you go on your training rides or training runs. And what quite a few people we find doing is on the live event, they might have a mix of water in their water bottles and then the High Five Sports Nutrition in their water bottles as well. So you've got the ability to switch back and forth and balance that, as Gary said, depending on the conditions and how you're feeling. Sometimes you'll adapt to that really well. Sometimes you might want something a little bit simpler. And that's the same with the foods on the pit stops as well. It's about finding the right stuff that suits you. And the best way of doing that is going out in your training runs and training rides and trialing running with the same kind of stuff that we'll have on the live event. But lots of range for you out on the trails, at the pit stops, and also in the base camp for dinner, breakfast as well. So all the food is taken care of. So the next one is around kit. And this can be something which is very exciting for some people or equally terrifying. But Gary, if you give a bit of advice just around the bikes in particular, and I can talk about footwear if you're setting off on the trails.
Well, we've got 3 pictures of bikes there. All of them would do for the event. Some of you will have Tourers, which is the bike on the left. You can keep up a good steady pace on that, and you'll get around. If you've got a Tourer, you're likely to be somebody who's quite comfortable sitting in the saddle for long periods of time anyway, so you'll know what you can do on that bike. If you've got a road bike, the middle one, all sorts of different bikes. You could be riding titanium, carbon, steel, aluminium. you just got to make sure that the bike is the right size for you. You know that bike, you know how to use it. You know that you can, for instance, stand up in the saddle. How the bike feels standing up in the saddle. It's a good way to train for hills. And that actually it's fitted for you, and it's the same with all of the bikes. So even the flat handlebars sort of hybrid bike that we've got there as well, they can kick up a really good bit of speed on a hybrid bike. You get some really quick riders on them. They're built to go relatively quickly. You can tend to find that if you're riding long distances on a hybrid bike, that you might have more potential hand problems or finger problems sometimes, because there's less places that you can put your hands. But as I said, if you've trained on the bike, you know the bike, it's fitted for you, you will know then where are the problem areas that you might have. And with all of these, it's about having the right bike that's for you and doing the training on that bike. So for instance, if you go out and buy another new bike just literally the week before because you really feel it's the right thing that you want to do, are you going to get the mileage in on that bike to know that it's not going to give you a problem halfway around because you're not used to it? Now, we've got 3 types of bike there. Some of you may be intending to ride on other types of bikes. Mountain bikes can be a little bit slower if you've got a big wide set of tires. I've ridden Parry in 1,200 kilometers, and I've been riding at times with people who are on Bromptons. But those people, they really know their bikes, and they know how fast they can go, and they know how long they can ride on them. So these are the best types of bikes for doing this event. And if you wanted any more advice on it, we'd be happy to give you some. That's great. Thanks, Gary. Picking up very similar echoes when we talk about footwear. Those same themes about going to, if you're not sure, go to your local kind of running shop or your local hiking shop, depending if you're walking or running. Get fitted, talk to the people in the shop. They'll be able to tell you about the subtle differences. Actually look at the footwear on your feet. We have people walking, running in all kinds of different footwear. What we would suggest is something relatively lightweight. You don't need something to take you up to Everest Base Camp and up into glacier territory to walk along the Thames Path. Occasionally you see people turning up in really, really heavy, serious mountaineering boots. If you've got them, then they are fine, but they're not going to be the easiest to get around with. Equally, we have lots of people turning up in road shoes. If it's dry weather, then they're usually fine. But we would suggest something with a little bit more grip. So the ones in the middle there are, an example of a trail running shoe with a slightly more sturdy sole. It'll give you a bit more grip if it's slippery or if it's wet over a few routes and some of the gravelly sections and things like that. But yeah, ultimately, people can complete the course in all kinds of different footwear, so don't feel like you've got to run out and buy something very specialist. But we'd recommend getting into your local footwear store if you're not really sure. Talk to someone there, explain about the event you're doing, and they'll be able to give you some good guidance because different brands fit different foot shapes and things like that. But yeah, a variety of ones, but we'd aim for if you're running a trail shoe or a lightweight hiking shoe if you're going to be walking it. So that's your kind of key piece of kit. But on the next slide, we'll go into a little bit more detail on the bike kit and on the trails kit. You'll probably notice first off some very fetching Sidley London Revolution branded kit, which is going to be delivered to you guys if you're signed up, I think towards the end of August. But we don't take care of absolutely everything. So Gareth, if you want to do a quick whiz through some of the key things or any top tips for what you might want for on the bike, that'd be great. Yeah, the kit that you've got there is more or less what you're going to need. So it's just, you're going to get your jersey, but you've got to make sure that, so you've got something like maybe an undervest. You can get like a sleeveless undervest to go underneath it. They will wick away a lot of the sweat. It feels like an extra layer in this summer temperature, but actually they'll wick away a lot of the sweat before it gets to your jersey in a hot day. and they, you know, they won't necessarily make you overheat, but you've got to make sure that you're looking for the right summer undervest. Your shorts, your bib shorts, or if you're riding with cycling shorts, which some people prefer to do, particularly the women don't like to necessarily ride with a bib short because it makes it a bit more difficult visiting the toilet. But it doesn't really matter whether it's shorts or bib shorts. Just make sure that the padding is good. They're good. They're relatively good quality. You can spend a lot of money on shorts, or you can spend a very small amount of money on shorts. But if the padding isn't good enough, it can make your ride really quite uncomfortable. And you need to make sure that you've tested those shorts, as I said earlier on, to make sure that on a longish ride, they don't chafe you. They don't make it that your undercarriage really, really sore. You must wear a helmet. You're going to need eyewear, and whether it's an overcast day or it's a rainy day, if you've got something that you know that you can either take off or put on, depending on whether it's sunny or not. I tend to have a good set of glasses that if it starts raining, I can't see through them, and I'll just tuck them in back behind the helmet, but they'll come back out again, wipe down and put on. You're going to need a tool, a bike tool, and a multi-tool is the best thing. It's got everything on it, something that's got 19, 20 different uses to fit on all the different parts of the bike. They're worth investing on, and they are fantastic bits of kit to have with you. You're going to need a small pump so that you can change a puncture. You're going to need spare tubes, and you'll need 2 spare tubes for the ride. If you get for the day, if you puncture, then you're going to want to ditch the tube when you get back, dispose of it properly. You will have replaced the tube on the road, and then you're going to need to put another tube in to carry with you. So you're going to need spares that are going to be in your bag at Windsor. There is a tiny little black hook that you can see there. That's a rear derailleur hanger. Now, that's a weird thing, but if you have a little bash on the side of your bike and you break that on your frame, it's designed to break away from the frame so that you don't break the frame. You can get them for each and every make of bike, and they're all different for each design of frame, but you can get them from the store that you purchase the bike from or online specific for your bike, and they are always worth having with you just in case. And you can carry them for 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly and nothing happens, and then suddenly something does happen, and when it does, you need to quickly get it off, and you can repair it on the road, or you can take it to our mechanics and they'll repair it for you. We'll get you down there for it. Your tire levers are really important. You'll have your bottle cages will be on your bike with your bottles, with all your energy fluid drinking as well. You've got chamois cream there. Chamois cream is absolutely fantastic. If you've never used it before on a long ride, just put it around. to talk about it openly, just put it around your bits, and it will do a fantastic job at stopping chafing. And the other thing that you might find really useful, they have some lip cream as well, because hot weather's you'll end up sometimes with your skin's drying out, and it's really good to put some lip chafing cream on. Your shoes, incredibly important. If you're not clipping into the pedals, and that's not something for you as a cyclist, make sure that your trainers that you're using are stout enough not to bend at the sole of your foot, because that can give you arch problems on your feet. And you normally find that cycling shoes are designed for a very strong, sturdy, flat platform, and that helps you with riding essentially. So if you haven't got round to doing that yet, or you're being put off by it, have a think about it, whether you're going to buy those shoes that clip in. There are different types of clip-in pedals. You can talk to people at a local bike shop about it. They'll advise you on the best shoes that would be suitable for you and the best pedals that would go on your bike, and then you can practice on it. And we all make mistakes. The first part of it in getting to learn how to do it is, you know, clipping in and out is just essentially, you know, sitting on the bike next to maybe a barrier somewhere and just practice clipping in and clipping out so that you know you've got it. But the shoes are really going to be important for you, and we wouldn't necessarily want people to be complaining about their feet aching if they haven't got the right shoe for the pedals they've got. You're going to need all of that to go in a bag, all of your tools, your inner tubes, your tire levers, all your spare bits to go into a bag that's big enough to carry potentially a little bit of extra energy food that you might have picked up from the feed stations as well if you haven't put it in your back pockets. So the back pockets of your cycling jersey, there'll be 3 pockets there. You can stuff as much into that as possible. One thing that isn't on there that you might need to think about, and whether that's something that just goes into your bag for Windsor, or actually you do need to carry it in a back pocket, is also a lightweight rainproof jacket. If it does rain, and although it's lovely in summer, it could be just a lovely warm shower, and it could be something that cools you down. But actually, if it's a rainy day, a jacket is something that's really useful, and it does stop the cold from creeping into you from rain for several hours. Now we're really hoping we're going to have a lovely day for that. The last thing we've got there are gloves. I don't think, well, depending on really what the weather's doing in October, you might be okay with just fingerless gloves, or you might be okay with a set of long fingered lightweight gloves. But we're hoping that the weather is going to hold out for us so that actually it hasn't turned very, very cold and you need something much warmer than that. So fingerless gloves for generally would be okay, and you will build up enough warmth in the core of your body, which will spread out to your arms and particularly to your feet as well. But you'll spread out, that core from the warmth of your body will spread down to your fingers if your fingers are cold, and you'll probably find that fingerless gloves, the red ones on the picture there, will be all right. But if not, make sure you just buy a set of lightweight, good quality, long-fingered cycling gloves, and they're very light, they just tuck away. And then you've got lights there, and you've got your what would be either a Wahoo, a Garmin, a Kangaroo, or various different types of sat nav for your bike. So firstly, it doesn't hurt, even if it's daytime all day by the time you've got in, to have lights on your bike. It just won't hurt. It sometimes makes you more visible on the road if you fancy having your rear light flashing for drivers to be able to see you. But if you're out on the road, and we're talking about October, it's going to start getting dark early, and you might need to think about making sure that you've got lights on the bike if you are going to be one of the slower riders on the road, to make sure that you can get in and you can see, and really importantly, that you can be seen. Some of the country lanes out there won't have lights. As you get into Windsor, you will enter a lot of areas where there are street lamps, but a lot of those country lanes won't have street lamps at all, and you might want to make sure that you're seen certainly by the drivers, and that's really useful. So the other thing then, the last one, the sat nav. If you want to watch the route as you go, make sure you don't make any wrong turns. If you haven't got one of these, or you've got just a basic bicycle computer that records how fast you're going and how far you've been, then one of these is a really good buy. They're not that expensive, and it allows you to download the what we call a GPX file. It's the specific file that would go into that little laptop computer, through your laptop, sorry, and then you will be able to follow the route as you're going. Fantastic bits of kit.
Thanks, Gary. A very thorough run through there. The trails piece is a little bit simpler, a bit less kit. So we've talked about the trainers already. Beyond that, you have your technical t-shirt, courtesy of Team Sidley. and then some running shorts or leggings, depending what your preference is and depending on the weather. And then just a simple rucksack with potentially some people have walking poles if they're walking it, some of those longer distances, a simple rucksack, which can double up as a hydration vest or a couple of water bottles in there. So yeah, the aim of the trails piece is, you can keep things simple. You really don't need to worry too much about those elements there. I think I'm slightly conscious of time, keeping people on this call. We maybe run a little bit behind. So the next slide is a few top tips for your kits. I think, Gary, if you can go through some of those, the critical ones in there, that'd be great.
Oh yes, I mean, I've covered a lot of this for already. So your kit, it's comfort over flat out speed. Unless you really know what you're doing and you really want to get a fast time and you're practiced at that, then you'll know what you're doing anyway, and you'll have all the kit for it. You need to make sure that you're comfortable on the bike. Time on the bike is the thing for that, and wearing the kit that you're going to use on the event. Make sure it's the right size for you. We're talking about contact points there. You might end up with a very sore bum. You might end up with a bit of a hot bottom. It's probably because you're sitting down too much in the saddle, or the saddle's too low or too high for you. If you can't quite reach the pedals with your feet while you're pedaling, it's too high. And if your knees are coming up and almost banging you on the chin, your saddle's too low. Practice when you're riding to on the hills, particularly, to stand up in the saddle every now and then, even if it's slightly uncomfortable and you feel a little bit wobbly. Practice on it. You'll hear some riders say it's not what you should do, climbing on the hills. Well, you wouldn't get people like Alberto Contador being as good as he was without being the most fantastic climber, standing up on the pedals. But really importantly, what it does is it allows you to your body weight through the pedals, but while you're doing so, it allows the blood to flow back into your bottom, so that when you go to sit back down again, your bum's not as hot and sore as it was. It's really important. Handlebar position as well, because if you're starting to get dead fingers, you need to move them around and you need to find a different position to put your hands in, but making sure you can still reach the gears, and really important, you can still reach the brakes. And if your feet are getting hot, it's a number of different things. It's firstly, you may have your shoes too tight, and your feet, your toes are starting to go numb. Or it could be that you suffer from something called what we call in cycling hot foot. It's because you've been pounding on those pedals for so long that the blood has flowed out of the sole of your foot behind your toes. Take your feet one at a time out of your pedals. If you're just rolling down an incline, and just hang it, and you'll find the blood will flow back into your toes, and you can feel it happen. And it's a good thing to practice on your training rides, just to make sure that you're not doing it actually on the event for the very first time. Yeah, so here we are, bedded in. Make sure you know what kit you should be wearing, how it fits, how it feels, and that it's good for you for the event. And the last thing we've got there is that you are reaching the point now where certainly at the latest point, it's maybe 2 weeks before the event, should be the last point that you go to look to get a service for your bike. So a service can be anything from just tweaking things and tightening things up and making sure that you haven't got to have anything replaced before the event, or it could be the full works because you might be suffering from certain things like your neck's aching, your back's aching, getting a full bike fit. And there's some specialists out there that can do that for you, and they can make a real difference.
That's great. Thank you very much, Gary. So the last couple of bits, we're just going to go through some top tips for camping for those people who will be staying overnight at Windsor. Depending what package you're going for as part of Team Sidley, some of you may be just there for the day, some of you will be camping overnight at Windsor Racecourse, and some of you might be staying in hotels nearby, but we're going to focus on a few top tips for camping. So the overnight piece, we will have a your bag you'll drop off at the start and we'll have ready and waiting for you when you arrive at Windsor Base Camp. The tent down at the bottom right are 2-man tents. You'll have one of those set up for you, ready to go. Beyond that, you need to bring your own stuff with you. So there's a full kit list in the event information guide, which gets sent out in advance. But our kind of top tips would be around just getting simple functional stuff. Again, a bit like with the hiking boots, you don't need Arctic level sleeping bags, but a good sleeping mat and a simple sleeping bag, some sensible kit for the evening. Even if it's a nice sunny day in early October, we're beginning to get into that kind of autumn nights, things like that. So some nice warm stuff to wear in the evening. You can get your Sidley London Revolution hoodie, and then your usual overnight kit and equipment. I'm not gonna list out the toothbrushes and toothpastes and things like that. But one big piece of advice is it's worth investing in a waterproof bag, and one a size larger than you might think you need. As much as you might be able to squeeze all of this into a bag when you're setting it up and packing it up at home, packing it back up the next day in your tent, the next morning it tends to have expanded by about 10 or 15%, and you don't want to spend the first part of your day on a Sunday morning trying to work out how you managed to get everything into your bag in the first place. So read through the kit list on the event information guide, go and stock up with those little bits and pieces, and the next slide we've got a few top tips which we've learned over the last 10 years of what you can make for a good comfortable night. So with camping, some people love it, some people love it less. Is probably the diplomatic way of putting it. Our advice would be to always just bring the things which will make you have a better night's sleep. So some people will be there in kind of full military on their tiny, very, very thin, lightweight sleeping mats. If you want a slightly bigger inflatable mattress or packing a pillow, no shame in that at all. If you're the person who has the better night's sleep, then you're going to have the better day the following day. So if you're a slightly light sleeper, work out the things that can make it comfortable for you. Definitely recommend earplugs and potentially an eye mask as well. When you've got 500, 600, 700 people all camping together, they are not soundproof tents, so you will hear all manner of noises coming out of your people in the tents nearby. So earplugs are a definite recommendation. We talked about the waterproof bag already, and if it's a brightly coloured one, it's going to be easier to spot it when you're collecting it at the end of the day. Warm clothes, waterproof shoes, even if it's dry, it can be kind of a bit dewy in the morning when you wake up. You don't want to set off with wet feet. And finally, we will have places where you can charge up mobile phones and your Garmins and bits and pieces like that. But equally, if you have a small charging pack within your tent, you can charge up all those electrical belongings actually next to you in the camp, rather than having to go back and forth into the central marquees and things like that. So there are a few top tips to keep in the back of your mind before you set off to the start at Lee Valley come up beginning of October. So that brings us to our last bit before we'll take any questions. These are just a few things on the administrative points. So all the information will come out in the event information guide, which is going to come out shortly to you guys. Like I said, the packing lists, locations, start times, all of those kind of things. You can book extras on your My Event portal, which is on your registration forms. So you can add parking for you and your supporters, either at start or at the base camp at Windsor as well. Get the shuttle buses as well. So if you want to get a lift to the start of the trail event, which is in Marlow, you can book a shuttle bus to get you there. So you can leave your car at Windsor, shuttle to the start at Marlow, and run back to the finish at Windsor. You can get all your kit lists and checklists on the event information platform. And finally, we'd recommend joining the Team Sidley Strava group, so you can find out all the other people who are going to be taking part from Sidley, whether you be employees, clients. I think it's going to go out to your friends and family as well. So start building that community. So by the time you get to the event, you'll know a bit more about these other people who are taking part, and don't be put off by, there'll always be someone in any Strava group who's doing about 500 miles commuting every week, who will be posting terrifying times, but the majority of people will be just like you, who will be thinking they should probably be doing a little bit more and struggling to find the time, but giving it a good go. So don't feel intimidated if you join that. There's a few people setting records. That's not what it's about. It's about getting to know one another, sharing some of those challenges as you go through, sharing those milestones. You start building up the miles, like Gary said. But before you know it, you'll be fit, in good shape, and we'll be there to welcome you at the start line down in Lee Valley. From our side at Threshold and from Gary and Keith, we can't wait. It's going to be another great event with a new crowd from Sidley. Wish you all the best on your final preparations. So that is the end of the slides from us. So I know we've had some questions in advance, which we've tried to cover off in the slides already. But if anybody's got any final ones they'd like to ask now, please chuck them into the chat. If not, we're obviously available for any calls, email in. It can either come in through the guys within Sidley who are running the program, or come through to us as well. We'll be happy to talk you through any of this stuff or anything else in more detail. So I can't see anything popping into the chat at the moment. So in that case, I just want to say a big thank you, Gary, big thank you, Keith, for dialing in some very kind of wise words from there, which I think will put people in good shape for when they actually set off on their bikes and things like that. So yeah, nothing else to say from me other than good luck with your training. May the sun keep shining. And hopefully we'll be able to keep the waterproofs dry by the time you get all the way around that 250k loop or back into the base camp on the 2nd of October, and we have another cracking year. So thanks everyone for dialing in, and looking forward to seeing you before too long. Take care. Bye.